There is a very specific type of poverty that only exists in the American middle class. It doesn't look like poverty. It looks like a 4-bedroom colonial with a 2-car garage. It looks like a stainless steel kitchen island. It looks like success. But if you peel back the aluminium siding, you will find a financial structure so fragile that a single medical bill, a corporate layoff, or a broken water heater could collapse the entire facade in a matter of weeks. This is the story of the 30-something high earner. In your 20s, financial mistakes are cheap. You buy a car you can't afford. You run up a few thousand on a credit card. You go to a music festival instead of putting money in a Roth IRA. These are rounding errors. They hurt, but they don't break you. You have time, and more importantly, you have a distinct lack of structural leverage. But your 30s are different. Your 30s are when you make the transition from a financial amateur to a financial hostage. This is the decade where society taps you on the shoulder, hands you a massive line of credit, and congratulates you for locking yourself into a cage of your own design. The most dangerous money mistake Americans make in their 30s isn't buying avocado toast. It isn't failing to skip the daily coffee. It isn't even carrying student loan debt. The most dangerous mistake is the quiet, systematic, and entirely socially acceptable confusion between upgrading your lifestyle and building your wealth. It is the moment you stop wasting money on small, meaningless things and start wasting a staggering amount of money on massive, invisible things, all while patting yourself on the back for finally being a responsible adult. Let's break down exactly how this trap is set, how the math silently works against you, and why the financial system is heavily incentivized to keep you from ever figuring it out. To understand the trap, you have to understand the psychology of the American 30-something. You have been working for roughly a decade. You have likely experienced a few promotions. Your income has crossed a threshold where you no longer check your bank account before buying groceries. You might have a partner. You might have a child or are planning for one. Suddenly, the starter apartment or the modest first home feels inadequate. The reliable 10-year-old sedan feels unsafe for a baby seat. Society has a script for this exact moment. The script says, upgrade, buy the forever home, get the safe, reliable SUV. You are making good money now, you deserve it. More dangerously, the script tells you that these aren't expenditures, they are investments. This is the great lie of the middle class. We call it the asset illusion. Let's look at the mechanics of the upgrade. Take a couple making $150,000 a year. By most global standards, this is tremendous wealth. By American standards, it is comfortable. They own a starter home. They have a little equity. But they want the 4-bedroom house in the better school district. It costs $700,000. When they sit down with the mortgage broker, the broker doesn't talk about total cost. The broker talks about monthly payments. The system is designed to compress massive, life-altering debts into bite-sized monthly chunks, so your brain doesn't trigger a panic response. They lock in the mortgage. They buy the house. They feel like they have arrived. Here is the uncomfortable math of what they actually just did. A house is not an investment. A house is a highly leveraged consumer good with a massive compounding maintenance liability attached to it. When you buy a $700,000 home with 20% down, you are borrowing $560,000. At a 7% interest rate over 30 years, you are not paying $700,000 for that house. You are paying roughly $1.3 million in interest alone. But it gets worse. The real trap of the 30s isn't just the mortgage. It is the structural inflation of your baseline existence. When you buy the bigger house, your property taxes scale up. Your insurance scales up. The cost to heat and cool the extra square footage scales up. The rule of thumb in real estate is that you will spend 1 to 2% of the home's value every single year on maintenance. On a $700,000 home, that is $7,000 to $14,000 a year in cash, just to keep the roof from leaking and the furnace from dying. You haven't bought an asset. You have purchased a massive, hungry machine that requires a relentless stream of your post-tax income just to stay in the same place. And this is where the math becomes violent. Every dollar that goes into the structural overhead of your upgraded life is a dollar that cannot be deployed into actual compounding assets. Let's say the upgrade from the starter home to the forever home costs this couple an extra $2,000 a month. This includes the higher mortgage, the higher taxes, the insurance, and the maintenance. $2,000 a month feels manageable to a high earner. But if that same couple had stayed in the smaller home, kept their overhead low, and invested that $2,000 a month in a basic S&P 500 index fund, assuming an average historical return of 8%, in 30 years, that monthly payment wouldn't just be gone. It would have grown into $2.9 million of liquid, tax-advantaged wealth. By choosing the drywall and the extra bedroom in their 30s, they didn't just spend $2,000 a month. They burned $3 million of their own future. Before we look at how the broader economy relies on you making this exact miscalculation, I want to pause and ask you something. Think back to a financial decision you made in your 20s or 30s. Something everyone, your parents, your friends, your bank, told you was a highly responsible, smart move. But looking back, it actually ended up quietly draining your wallet and limiting your freedom. Drop it in the comments below. We read these. In fact, we build these videos around decoding the exact financial myths you bring up. And if you are tired of falling for the economic illusions designed to extract your wealth, and you want to understand how the machine actually works, hitting the subscribe button is the best way to make sure you see our next breakdown. Now, let's look at why the system desperately needs you to fall into this trap. You have to understand your role in the American economy. If you are a high-earning professional in your 30s, you are the golden goose. You have something highly valuable, a reliable, recurring stream of future income. Banks don't want your money today. They want a legal claim on your labor for the next 30 years. To get that claim, they have to convince you that borrowing money to consume is actually a form of saving. Enter the concept of home equity. Home equity is the most brilliant marketing concept ever invented by the financial sector. It convinces you that the money you pour into a depreciating wooden structure is somehow being safely stored in a vault. It isn't. Home equity is phantom wealth. It exists only on paper. You cannot buy groceries with home equity. You cannot pay for your child's college with home equity. You cannot retire on home equity. The only way to access that wealth is to do one of two things. You either sell the house and move somewhere cheaper, which nobody actually does because lifestyle creep works like a ratchet, it only goes one way. Or you borrow against the equity. And right there, the trap snaps shut again. You borrow against the house to renovate the kitchen. You borrow against the house to buy the new car. You are taking on more debt, paying more interest, all because the system convinced you that you were rich on paper. This is the great tragedy of the American 30-something. They become a pass-through entity. You work 50, 60 hours a week. The company pays you a handsome salary. And before that money even has time to get warm in your checking account, it is immediately rooted out. It goes to the mortgage servicer. It goes to the auto loan company. It goes to the property tax collector. It goes to the streaming services, the lawn care company, the private preschool. You are a highly compensated conduit for capital. You generate wealth, but you retain almost none of it. You have built a massive balance sheet, but you are not the beneficiary. The banks are. This brings us to the ultimate cost of this mistake. It is a cost that cannot be measured in dollars or interest rates. It is the cost of your own autonomy. When you lock yourself into an incredibly high baseline cost of living in your 30s, you murder your ability to take risks. In your 20s, you could quit a job you hated because your rent was cheap. You could start a business. You could pivot your career. You were agile. But when you have a $4,000 a month mortgage, 2 car payments, and a lifestyle that requires $12,000 of post-tax cash a month just to keep the lights on, you are no longer a free agent. You are a captive. You cannot quit the corporate job. You cannot start the business. You cannot take a year off to figure out what you actually want to do with your life. You have to keep feeding the machine. The fear of losing what you have built becomes the overriding force in your life. You become conservative. You become risk-averse. You put your head down. You tolerate the toxic boss. You survive the restructuring, and you pray that the music doesn't stop. Because if the music stops, the entire fragile architecture of your life comes crashing down. This is why we see so many people in their 40s and 50s who are tremendously successful on paper, but completely hollowed out and miserable in reality. They won the game they were told to play, only to realize the prize was a lifetime of indentured servitude to their own lifestyle. So, how do you avoid it? You have to reject the premise. You have to realize that true wealth is not the accumulation of expensive liabilities. True wealth is the accumulation of options. Wealth is the ability to say no. Wealth is the ability to walk away. Wealth is a low overhead and a high pile of liquid assets that generate income while you sleep. When you enter your 30s, the most radical, rebellious thing you can do is absolutely nothing. When your income doubles, keep your housing payment exactly the same. When you have a kid, don't buy the $80,000 SUV, buy the reliable used wagon. Take that massive gap between what you earn and what you consume and buy your own freedom. Buy index funds. Buy cash-flowing assets. Buy back your time. Because the system is waiting for you. It is watching your salary increase. It is prepping the paperwork for your new, upgraded life. It wants to give you the keys to the castle, as long as you agree to become a prisoner inside it. The math is clear. The trap is set. The only question left is, when you look at the life you are building right now, are you building a foundation for your own freedom, or are you just building a highly profitable balance sheet for someone else?